What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video. Today we are doing a Monsterverse tier list. So far there are 5 movies in the Monsterverse and 2 TV shows. So we'll be breaking that down as we jump into the tier list. But before we begin, guys, if you have any cool ideas for future tier lists you want to see me do, let me know in the comments below, and if I use your suggestion, I'll give you a shout out in that video. And of course, if you enjoy this video and you want to see more, please consider leaving a like, subscribe, turn notifications, all that good stuff. And I appreciate it. Now, with that said, guys, let's just don't take any more time. Let's jump in. Okay, so before we actually jump into this ranking, as you can see, I have amazing, I have good, I have okay, I have bad, and I have didn't see. Now, usually, if you guys have been around for a while, my tier lists usually have a booty category, and that's between bad and didn't see. And pretty much that means like there's completely nothing redeemable about a movie. I don't think the Monsterverse has a booty movie in it, so I decided to take that category out. But it might have a bad movie in it. Also, with that said, I'll probably lose my Monsterverse credibility for this, but I haven't seen either one of the TV shows. I got a brief overview of both of them, and like I understand what happened in them, but as far as actually watching them, I have not, so I can't truly rank them. So I'm going to put them in the didn't see category. In fact, I saw every single one of these movies at release, and then I watched them all again just recently. About like 2 months ago, I watched the first 4, and then just like 2 days ago I watched Godzilla X Kong, and this one's still pretty fresh in my brain, so maybe as time goes on this will change. I'll do an updated tier list of this maybe in like 6 months or something like that, but for right now this is going to be my ranking, and I'll go into my explanations for why I'm ranking things the way they are. Okay, so starting from release order, we're going to start with Godzilla 2019. So the thing about Godzilla 2019 is that I remember when I saw this movie in theaters, I was really disappointed by it. What I wanted was a lot of kaiju action, and the movie steered away from the action. Now, I hadn't watched this movie since I watched it in theaters, and I revisited it 2 months ago, like I said. And honestly, it's actually a pretty solid movie. I think that so far it might have the strongest human characters. And I know like Bryan Cranston's character, when he passes away, there's definitely a big hit to that. But I do think that Aaron Taylor Johnson, he got a little too much hate for this movie back in the day. And I think it was just because it wasn't really that he wasn't good or the characters weren't compelling. It was just like we came to the Godzilla movie to see kaiju fighting. You know, and we get that later in this franchise. But this movie is definitely much more subdued. And I understand what Gareth Edwards was going for. He was the director of the film. But what he was doing was he was giving us little bits and pieces leading up to the final climactic fight, which we actually get to see, which in all fairness is really cool. And I think it's definitely a really good, I guess you could say it's a good culmination of the movie. Like you're waiting for this the whole time. You get kind of teased here and there, and then you finally get it, and it's pretty good. It's a good fight. Of course, it doesn't really hold a candle to the later fights in this films, which makes sense. It is the first one, but as far as this movie goes, it's kind of establishing this universe and establishing this new legendary Godzilla, because before this we had the 98 Godzilla, and regardless of how you feel about that movie, as time has gone on, I grow to respect it more. But yeah, it's definitely not nearly as good as this film. Now, would I consider this movie good in 2024 if they didn't continue the Monsterverse? Like if there was no Kong Skull Island or anything beyond that, if this would have just been a standalone movie, kind of like how 98's was, just a standalone movie that's just there, would I consider this movie good? I don't know. I think in a lot of ways there are just some franchises where movies that were considered rough or even bad in the past get brought up higher because movies that followed it in the franchise are good, and they do a good job of bringing those previous movies up. An argument I would make is something like Iron Man 2 and Iron Man 3, or even like people really didn't like Avengers Age of Ultron when it first came out. Well, not everyone did, but it was definitely felt like it was a step down from the first Avengers. And as time went on and more movies added to that story and kind of brought those movies that were considered lower on the totem pole up, it is interesting. I think that kind of happened in this franchise, and I definitely say that happened with the Godzilla 2014. So while I've come around to this movie, I still understand why some might consider this one of the weaker of the franchise. It is not your traditional Godzilla film, but I think it acts as like a perfect introduction into the world. There's just enough of Godzilla action that you're going to get later in the franchise, but still enough to kind of establish itself on its own. I think it's actually pretty good. I'm going to put it in the good category. Some people are going to hate me for this, but I think that I did a pretty good explanation to why I think that movie is there. So yeah, I'm going to put it right there. And you got to remember that these are masterpieces when it comes to kaiju movies. But if we're talking about all cinema, I mean, come on, you can't really compare them that way. Okay, so I talked enough about Godzilla 2014, but overall, I think it's a solid beginning to the franchise. I think that it maybe could have taken a little more risks here and there. It's definitely a lot more safe than a lot of the movies that come later. But I think it's a good establishing point. It gets you into the story before it expands, and yeah, so I think it's fine. Next, Kong Skull Island. This is one of those ones that people always just disagreed with me all the time. When I first saw Kong Skull Island, I actually thought it was pretty bad. And the reason why I thought it was bad, I think for me, this is going back, 2017 this came out. The reason why I think this bothered me was because I was a big fan of the King Kong story. Like the original one made in the 30s, but also the one in 2005 made by Peter Jackson. I always just really loved King Kong on Skull Island fighting dinosaurs, and that was kind of my perspective on Skull Island. Now, as time has gone on, much like how I said with the Godzilla 2014, and the story has kind of expanded more on Kong, I actually do really appreciate this film a lot more. And I 100% understand why some people actually put this as their number one. There's something about it, maybe it's just because I'm a big Godzilla boy. You know, I love Kong, but Godzilla, he's my boy. You know, and I just think maybe there's a little bit of a piece that falls from it. I kind of feel like this movie is like a side movie in the franchise. Like, you don't actually have to watch this one if you're watching the whole franchise. I recommend it, obviously. A few months ago, before I actually watched these movies, when I was thinking about the franchise, I thought about Godzilla 2014, I thought about King of the Monsters, I thought about Godzilla vs Kong, and I thought about the, Godzilla x Kong, and then I realized, like, wait, that's right, Kong Skull Island is in there too. And that's not necessarily an attack on the movie. I just think it's like Godzilla is kind of our central point of this universe. And for me, I'm a big Godzilla fan, like I said. I love Kong, though. I really do. And I think these later movies have definitely made him a lot better in my eyes, at least this version of Kong. Overall, though, while I do think that it is better than it used to be, I still think that it's overall just an okay movie. And here's the thing, guys. Like I said, fun movie. I completely understand if some people like these movies more. Is it much more fun than 2019? Yes. But I think 2019, being that it was the first movie in the franchise, and that it actually feels like it's more cohesive to the rest of the franchise, where this one, like I said, Skull Island kind of feels like it's a side story that you don't actually have to watch. I would recommend it, but you could take it out of the story and you can kind of still get the full gist of things. You could even say it's something like the DCEU, where like there was Man of Steel, then there was BVS, then there was Zack Snyder's Justice League. And there's other movies in there, obviously, but like those are the three main ones you want to watch, right? And you could do that. That's kind of what these movies are like. But then there's the Wonder Womans in there. There's the Aquamans. You can add them in, but you don't really have to watch those to get the main story of Snyder's vision. And that's kind of the example I'm making here. So Kong, Skull Island, still a very fun movie, still recommend it, but I would probably put it in the okay section as far as these movies go. And by the way, okay doesn't mean bad. Okay just means like on the scale of Godzilla, Monsterverse movies, it's just okay. You know, it's still fun. I'm just trying to cover my bases here. I don't want to get too much hate. I will, but that's okay. Okay, next one we have Godzilla, King of the Monsters. So King of the Monsters was spawned out of most of the hate for 2014. 2014 was very subdued. Like I said, it was very safe. It was a very easy entry into this universe, and potentially would have an expansion, or maybe it would just be a standalone film. They decided to expand upon it, which is, I'm glad they did. And Godzilla, King of the Monsters kind of just came in and was like, hey, you guys didn't get enough monster fights? Well, guess what? Here's your monster fights. The biggest problem with this movie is I think that some of the characters, the human characters, are kind of unbearable in this film, specifically the mom. I remember thinking that in 2019 when I first saw this film, and then when I rewatched it a few months ago, yeah, she's very, very weirdly written. And I think that's the biggest issue with this film. Another thing that bothers me about this film is that everything is very dark. I get like everywhere that Ghidorah goes, he makes a storm. And so that's the idea, like there's always storm, you can't see what's going on. That makes sense, I get it. But I do like that the later movies, GVK and GXK, they let you see what's going on. You know, you could actually watch the fight in its entirety. That is one hit I would put on Godzilla, King of the Monsters, but then again, like I stated, that was kind of part of the plot. So I give it a an okay. Ghidorah is really cool, like him. I just think overall, while Godzilla 2014, or Godzilla 1 you could say, it was a really good introduction to this universe, King of the Monsters was a good turning point to it as well. Interesting, it's only the second movie, but it kind of just really just thrusts you into the universe you want. And I think as far as kaiju movies go, I'm going to put it in the top of good. I don't know if I can put amazing. At one time, this was my favorite of the Monsterverse, but as time has gone on, I think my favorite has changed, and I'll explain why. But as far as King of the Monster goes, right at the top of good. Definitely better than 2014, definitely better than Kong Skull Island, but is it better than the remaining two? We're going to find out. So, next one, Godzilla vs. Kong. I know I'm probably going to get some hate for this, but I'm going to put this in the amazing category. When I first saw it, I actually ranked it underneath King of the Monsters. But with the added context of Godzilla x Kong, it does make this movie amazing in my mind. You get your kaiju fights. This is one of the first movies where the human characters, you actually like care about what's going on, and you have actually interesting ones, which is nice. I mean, at least with the A plot characters. The B plot characters, like Millie Bobby Brown's characters, like her and their squad, they're fine. But I love Gia. I think Gia is a great character. I think she is an awesome introduction into bringing Kong and Godzilla together. That was great. And then the connection between her and Kong, and even the connection between her and her adoptive mother, is just really good. I'm glad that they brought those good elements. They took them into the next movie, which is cool. But yeah, overall, as far as kaiju movie goes, I think this might be the best so far. And the fights are loud and dumb, but I mean, that's just kaiju movies in general, and I think that they're great. Like they work great. I think the pacing in this movie is really good. You get a lot of action, then you get a little slow time, then you get more action and slow time, action and slow time. Overall, so far, I'm going to put that in the top of amazing. And of course, the introduction of Mechagodzilla before he's destroyed, and the connection to Ghidorah in the previous film. A lot of people hate that, but I don't know. I think it's chef's kiss. I think it's perfect. Perfect. Down to the last minute detail. Okay, maybe not perfect, but it's definitely a cool way to tie the two films together. And yeah, I like that. I also think that the best fight so far in this franchise is when Kong and Godzilla are fighting each other in the neon lights of Tokyo. Like, that's the best fight in this entire franchise so far. So I think as far as what is the best kaiju fight we've seen, not just like in this movie or franchise, but I mean like in all of kaiju fighting movies, I think that's the best fight. So yeah, even better than anything in GX Kong, but we'll talk about that next. So yeah, so far Godzilla vs. Kong, that's the amazing. Okay, next we have Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. I'm going to put it in the didn't see for a second. I'm going to kind of explain my reasons before I show you where I'm going to put it. I think that this movie is very fun. It is definitely the apex movie as far as if you like kaiju, and you like kaiju your whole movie, this is your movie. This is what people have been asking for a long time. There are some elements of this movie that I'm not a massive fan of. I actually did a review on this. I'll leave a link to it in the description below if you want to hear all my specifics on the movie. This movie does kind of feel like it's two films combined, and this was my biggest point to make. It feels like they wanted to make a Kong or a King Kong movie, a Kong becoming king type of thing movie, and there was also a Godzilla movie doing his own thing, charging up. And it's like they took pieces of that movie that they had ideas for Godzilla charging up and, you know, killing other monsters and absorbing the energy, stuff like that, and they just put it into this film. And so that's what it feels like. And then they cut some stuff from Kong's story, and they made them both just one movie. I think that does kind of hinder the film a little bit, because now it feels like this movie needed an extra 20 minutes, and this movie was already an hour and 50 minutes or something like that. So it was already a 2-hour movie, you know, and it needed more time. This movie also doesn't really give you time to breathe like the previous one did. I think Godzilla vs. Kong actually did a much more better job with its pacing. Where Godzilla x Kong just keeps on moving. Some people probably like that though. I mean, that's a con for me, but for some people, I'm sure that's a positive. You know, you're just constantly moving to the next event. I really like Scar King at first. His introductory scene is really cool, and then they kind of he becomes a generic villain after that, which is unfortunate. I liked when he first showed up. He seemed like he was kind of like a gangsta. You know, he seemed like he was like the prison king or something like that. Not really like a king of a society, more of like the person in charge or the big boss in prison. That's the kind of vibe he gave me, and I really liked that at first. But Yeah, he becomes a generic villain then by after that scene. Shimo is an interesting villain slash, I guess you could say more like an anti-hero, because it's not actually a destroyer like some of the monsters in this. It's a protector that's being used as a destroyer, which is an interesting concept, especially in the end when Kong becomes, I wouldn't say Shimu's master, but becomes his companion in a way. I guess Shimu is kind of like Kong's horse or something like that. I don't know. It's a cool, interesting concept that they can really explore in the future. I was definitely surprised when they didn't kill off Shimu, and he's kind of like a good guy now. And it's almost like the next threat, the next movies are going to have to be really big to be able to take on Godzilla, Kong, Mothra, Shimu. Something big is going to have to come to take on all four of those guys. Like, it's just, I don't know who could even win that fight. I don't even know if like even Destroya could even take that many kaiju down. I don't know. We'll find out, of course, in the future. We'll probably wait another 3 years before we find out. I didn't really know how to feel about the pink Godzilla and the yellow glove Kong, but the movie does a pretty decent job bringing those two elements into the story, especially Godzilla's gearing up type thing. Kong's is kind of very like, hey, let's just do this for toys. I'm okay with it though, because I like Kong and I like Trapper in the movie, so I'm okay with that. Overall though, Godzilla x Kong is a very, very fun kaiju film, and like I said, as far as kaiju movies go, if you love kaiju all the time and you don't really want any time to breathe in your movies, then this is definitely the best for you. But for me, as far as things go, Godzilla vs Kong has better pacing, but I'm going to put this one right in front of King of the Monsters. I don't think it's quite amazing. Now, like I said, I just watched it once 2 days ago, so I'm sure as time goes on and it kind of sits in my brain a little more, maybe it could go up or maybe it could go down. But for right now, I think this is my ranking, with Godzilla vs Kong at the top and Kong Skull Island at the bottom. But like I said, they're all great films. Like, they're all great. If you're looking for kaiju films, they're all great. Just some I like more than others, and I'm sure you guys are the same. But how would you rank these movies? Do you have any cool ideas for future tier lists I can do? Let me know in the comments below, and if I use your suggestion, I will give you a shout out in that video. Make sure to like, subscribe, and turn notifications for more videos. And until next time, guys, I'll catch you later. Peace.